Hello, everyone. We should be live right now. Please let me know in the chat if you can hear me well, and we'll be starting in a few moments. Feel free to introduce yourself, let us know where you're from. Loud and clear, perfect. Thank you, Kenny, for confirming. Perfect. So, Adam, can you put the slides then on screen? Great. I will wait another 30 seconds to let people log in into the session. And meanwhile, continue using the chat. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the chat because the UPRI team will be there to answer it directly, or we will take also questions at the Q&A at the end, or maybe even during the session. Great. So I want to welcome you to our fascinating session today with our event partner UPRI on how to eliminate the gaps in your temperature compliance process. And you have been probably to many webinars with us in UPRI, and you will notice a new and incredible look with UPRI's new logo. So congratulations on that. Looks beautiful. So they have a new logo, new looks to it, and maybe you'll hear a bit about the background from our speakers today. So I'm joined today by Adam Hartman, the co-founder at UPRI, and Dalesh Ukmar, the senior validation consultant at UPRI, who will be your main speakers for today. Please make sure to stick with us throughout the whole session so you can also get the free certificate of attendance that is sponsored by UPRI as well. And saying that, I would like to give the stage to Adam and Alesh.
Hi everyone, and thank you very much, Jan, for having us today. We are mega excited to be here.
Super excited, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time I'm part of the webinar here in our new webinar studio.
That's my second time ever, so not that I'm really a seasoned speaker here, but yeah, really excited to be here.
Yeah, and where are you located, Jan, right now?
So I'm in Germany,
Nice. We see in the chat that we have attendees from all around the world.
all
It's so
around the
cool.
world. Yeah,
It's
so that's
from
beautiful.
Pakistan to Canada to Brussels to Colorado. Welcome everybody. As always, we are amazed and excited to see you here together with us. Um, as Jan mentioned, we have been cooking the last couple of months on a new visual design and a new line in UPRI. It's going really well, and we've been honing in on you guys, basically figuring out who are we talking to, and then we decided on a new cool design anyway. So maybe a fast poll or a question for the chat. We just
Yeah.
tested Jan on this. When you look at our UPRI logo, just on the left of it, what does that look to you?
What does represents?
Yeah, what do you think? Jan, you were like incredibly good at this.
Yeah, so it's like a Rorschach test. So just say whatever pops to your mind, and you probably will be right.
Yeah, just please let it come in the chat. Meanwhile, I can give you a couple of inputs. So basically, UPRI is derived from the word Euprymnus galopus. It's a Hawaiian bobtail squid. I look it up on Google. It's a rather funny small creature. The idea with UPRI and the Euprymnus galopus is basically that we started and founded UPRI because of a decentralized nervous system within the Hawaiian bobtail squid. And it kind of has some similarities to the technical system that we run in UPRI. The idea is that all our devices, all our sensors out there, which is located at 50 different countries today, they are working completely independently, but still connected to a central database. We can control them, but they can actually control themselves also. and thereby we derived the name Euprymnoscolopus to Upri.
Literally like squid's tentacles.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's basically the jellyfish. Thank you, Iofi. It's a squid that we try to represent, at least with the logo. Regardless, welcome to this webinar. Welcome,
welcome,
to our
guys.
new branding, and welcome to you also, Alish.
Thank you, Adam. So, a little introduction here. So, my name is Alish. I'm the senior consultant at Upri. I've been part of Upri's team from like a bit over 3 years. I started actually at Upri. We've been just kind of maybe 12, 13 people. So, we came a long way since then. My background is actually in quality control, but in a completely different industry. We're talking here about the mechanical industry. Then I had a little break in the service industry as well. And then after reinventing myself, taking a new education, I got back to my quality roots and I landed at Upri. That was some time ago. And since then, I'm here.
That's so nice. And yeah, I'm the co-founder of Upri. You just heard the story before. I worked with UNICEF some plus 10 years ago, and today I have a role in the commercial part of Upri. And the webinar today is very interesting for me to be part of, because we're going to talk about the gaps in temperature compliance. And like, first starting point there is obviously, what is temperature compliance really? And we're gonna like touch base about how we look upon the word temperature compliance. Before we just go on with this, yeah, my background, by the way, I have a master's degree in engineering. I now work in the commercial part of Upri. I'm a product developer. And today, well, I've been working with these plus 500 customers that we have in Upri. But behind the scenes, a very important part about this is
We're not alone here,
we're
right?
not alone.
No.
We have so many cool people. So basically, for you guys out there, also part of this chat, you can reach out to Senna, one of our quality professionals. She's sitting ready for you in the chat. So remember that you have 1 hour with Senna right now, and ask questions and use and interact with her while we run the webinar. And then we'll come back to some of the questions during the Q&A.
Exactly.
Chelsea has extended product knowledge and is also there for you in order for you to guide and advise in terms of, where you heading, and if you see any relevance there. And then obviously thanks to Frederikke and Nils and Jan, who is behind the lines and been doing so much work to help us
Exactly.
with preparing this.
Yeah, without them, this wasn't possible.
Nope.
Exactly.
So right, just for convenience for you guys out there to just know what is the credibility of us talking about this. So Upri is taking this word up, temperature compliance, as a new thing. Basically, it's kind of in our service that we provide a one-stop solution for, guaranteed compliance. And all in all, temperature compliance for us is a set of different things. It's temperature monitoring, which is the operational thing. It's validations, it's mapping, and it's calibrations. And all in all, what it provides you with our services is that you get through an audit very easily. There are a lot of different offerings and a lot of different benefits, but while thinking this way. And that's basically the reason why we created this webinar today, because we found a lot of trends. We found a lot of like gaps in the normal work that we see out there that we just want to touch base with. And hopefully you can find your own way through to a lot more efficient way of handling temperature compliance as a whole. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, how to look temperature compliance in a holistic way, right? What is temperature compliance does not need to be like many different processes. It can be covered under one umbrella, basically.
And that's exactly what we want to touch base with on this first slide. So one thing that I just need to kind of frame out is that when we talk about this topic, it's many different things. It's quality, it's operations, it's validation teams, it's calibration teams, and it's often also IT. Yeah. And this means that there's a whole lot of different roles and responsibility areas, whole lot of different levels in the company that's actually touching base with the complete set of temperature compliance. This means that this particular webinar is going to be kind of a mix-up between, there are some suggestions that are on a strategic level, some on a operational level, and some on a tactical level.
Exactly.
And so therefore bear with us in this case that there will be some for everybody, a bit for everybody, but I'm sure you have even your own concerns or even your own ideas. And then again, I can only I hope that you will bring it up in the chat and the QA so we can have a conversation about this in the end. So one thing that I just wanted to present that I'm really eager to talk about when talking about this combined area of temperature compliance is that normally when we look at this, it's a very siloed process. When you look at this circle on the right, it's we can kind of narrow or double down on a temperature cooling unit. It could be a refrigerator. And during its lifetime, it goes through a lot of different stages, and it's being handled by a lot of different people also. There are ongoing monitoring, running the operations of it. Then once a year, you have to calibrate the devices within. Then once in a while, depending on the industry that you're coming from, if you're in pharma, you most likely need to do a revalidation. And obviously,
you start with the validation.
You start with the validation. Yeah. I was just about to end up with the validation, right? Then you do ongoing reviews or tendencies, again, depending on in which industry you represent. Once in a while, you have audits. You can challenge me on this, but for me, it's about 4 times a year, depending on how many and the type of seriousness of your customers, also the level internally of your internal audits. Then you opt for a revalidation again. And now we're back to the circle. You obviously start with the user requirement spec and the validation. Now I've covered so many different things. And what I wanted to just point out with this circle is that there's a lot of different roles that are involved in this process. Validation team is one thing, ongoing monitoring is a different thing, and calibration is a completely third thing. And then obviously you have just the runnings of the fridge, the physical equipment itself, which is often also a different team. So the point I want to make here is that when looking at it like this, there are historically good reasons that this has been, this has been different roles and responsibility areas, because when you are in calibration, you come with a metrology background. When you're in validation, you come with a quality background. When you are in the monitoring background or in the monitoring section, you often is part of the FMS or the BMS system or something like that. And then you come with a technical background. So yes, it makes sense that it is like this today. But in order for you guys out there to enter an audit and just have a nice time and have everything documented, where all the papers are located and everything, that's the challenge. And that's why we need to talk about siloed processes. We need to consider the fridge as having a life cycle where we combine the efforts and we figure out what is the lifetime of this fridge. And we'll come back to that. But that's the first kind of thing that I want to double down on.
And of course, I mean, everything starts from a risk-based approach here, right? So when we look at the lifetime of a fridge, right, especially in the life science industry, where actually is an industry which is product-driven in this case, right? So what we have to consider is kind of what is the risk of handling those goods? What is the storage unit that we're putting on? How the whole process works in this case when from actually the installation of the unit to the operational to the day-to-day operations, right? And the risk-based approach is actually a topic that comes up almost every single time when we are hosting those webinars, especially with Jakob Korensen, which is our quality officer and one of the co-founders as you. And this is actually fundamental for the validation specialist when they're performing, for example, mappings and validations. And how that is done, right? It's
I want to also just point out that to me, it's kind of like the reason why we bring it up in this webinar again, because we always use some time on the risk-based approach, because it's kind of fundamental to accepting the ability to kind of confront this siloed approach to temperature compliance as a whole, because you just heard there are many different roles, many different fields, many different responsibility areas. And in order for you out there to align that and start this ability to align all these conflicting interests in some occasions, a risk-based approach is really there to help you. And it's a concept basically of consolidating your protocols and just not accepting a protocol as it is, because what we see out there is always, you use a lot of time on developing a protocol, and then you reuse and reuse and reuse it.
You can just set in your ways how to do stuff, but it's not it's not an efficient and effective ways to that to perform those activities. It's actually really important that you continue questioning, that you continue to improve, and especially because an improved protocol can really improve the efficiency of your validation processes in general, because one size doesn't fit all, right? And if we are kind of stuck in the certain processes, we just risk to overtest, to have a too wide of a scope that does not fit specific cases, but also some too detailed protocols, maybe an overkill for the goods that you're storing in that unit. You don't need all of those kind of activities to prove that actually something is fit for purpose. So that's why it's really important that the risk-based approach is on point, based on the utilization of the unit.
Absolutely. And I think a point is also just accepting, and you again, please challenge us on this, because it's something that we take up every webinar. It's so important from an organizational point of view also, that you kind of accept the fact of a risk-based approach, because it's alternatively, it's just so hard to actually change the culture and change and accept the changes that will arise by try to break down those silos around in the organization. And we'll also come back to it later. One of the things that are so easy for you to start working with is actually accepting non-binary conclusions.
Exactly.
So just to pinpoint one of those like takeaways from this, and it's something again that Jakob is really, really emphasizing. Non-binary conclusions is there for you to use, because there's not always just a single answer for particularly cases like this, even though I know that the protocols often ask for, yes or no.
Yeah. And of course, this kind of approach will also kind of free you and your employees for labor-intensive protocols when it's not necessary. So it's also important to challenge these kind of, as you mentioned, those non-binary conclusions, because, as we said, it's product-driven in this case, and it's not. Things can change, applications can change, and what is actually how I say a not a non-conformity, but a deviation. What is acceptable, what is not. It's not always black and white. It's all really depends on what's the purpose that you're of the unit, and what's the purpose of the unit in this case. So that's what is important, that protocols are up to date, that protocols are not generalized too much.
And I know it's easy to say, just update your protocols, just change them, and I know there's a huge change process involved in doing so. So obviously it's not as easy as that. The risk-based approach is something of a culture, right? And then
Exactly.
in the end, you end up with the ability really work with it positively and really start to see the impact of the change that you wanna find. And we're completely aware of that while working with you guys out there. I
So challenge your protocols is
Yeah.
the conclusion. Should be one of the points here.
And
Challenge
actually,
your protocols.
Alice, I just asked the question out there, and it seems like I think you can see the poll on the screen right now, and there are a lot of you out there who seems to agree with this point. Maybe you even have other findings or conflicts with the risk-based approach, because I know there are also some downsides with it. But let's talk about that later. But thank you for answering the poll. Right, let's have a look at the next slide. Unifying systems for deviation management. So again, we're coming back to the point about why do we want to look upon temperature compliance as a whole, combining validation, calibration, and monitoring operations into one. One thing is deviation management.
Exactly. So in this case, of course, deviation can cause disruptions within the normal processes and all that. So how do we deal with deviation and how we actually address them in a proper manner? So here is when we talk about temperature compliance, there's so many things that can get wrong, right? And especially when temperature compliance is such a broad and narrow term to at the same time, but um, uh, deviation management, especially a unified deviation management, comes really handy when you have a process in place where you start from, as the wheel that we had before, from the validation process all the way to the monitoring and all that, how we actually are able to have a track record of all the activities that has been done, how from the validation process, how the performance of the specific unit to the operational performance of the unit to the ongoing monitoring. If that's a unified system, will give us a peek, a view into the if our findings are actually correct, if there is a unified, if it's a consistency from our testing exercises to our operational day-to-day operations. And here, when you're talking about day-to-day operations, right, then it's also the human error that comes into place. And here it's really important that unifying, having a unified systems when it comes to deviation management, allow us to have more transparency, allow us to have more accountability, but also allow us to run backwards and see what is the historical, how it's called, basically all the traceability of all the deviation that happened back in time. So
Yeah, and we can build up an example, right? That you're running a company out there, and you have calibrations of all your devices. You have maybe a plus 100 data loggers or sensors, monitoring sensors that you're using, and then you have all the calibration certificates one place, and you have all the logs another place, and then you have a deviation management protocol third place. You have multiple different people working with it.
and departments as well, as we saw before, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then this happens. An audit appears, right? And then you start collecting papers from, calibration certificate. Oh, there's deviation. Yeah, what was it about? Yeah, you did actually do the deviation thing, and now you need to connect it with the actual log, with the actual calibration certificate. This is completely normal for a lot of companies out there. So again, by unifying and looking, having a tool that can kind of connect the deviations together with the actual log, together with the actual calibration, together with the actual validation of the equipment, can speed up things so much. And can also another point that I want to bring out there is also that I'm aware, at least, that a lot of people is feeling a lot of stress about running around for papers like this, preparing for audits when they don't have the right documentation for it, or just because the processes and the workarounds in the company are somewhat troublesome because it's paper heavy and everything like that. It's really worth looking into unifying and connecting deviations with the actual runnings of the system. Maybe you have some experience out there, and I know, is this easy done? Does it require an IT system?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
It does.
There are several out there that can do this. Can you do it in spreadsheets and Excel and somehow validate that process? You
Yes.
can do that. It's also a big workaround. And can you do it completely manually? Yes, you can. That's unprofessional. And well, so basically that's we know it's not just done by that, but it's worth at least considering deviation management in order for you to perform in audits and in compliance speedier and faster.
So let's also assume that you have more of a paper-based system, or even Excel sheet-based system. How much time is taken from the individual, the technician, the profession itself? How much time is taken from their day-to-day activities into logging basic informations?
Yeah, I've heard about some of the cases we have. Walking around, taking a route, extracting data. This is from USB-driven data loggers, but also just from wireless systems. Taking around, then if there are any deviations, note them down, reacting. Yeah, we talk at least the cup of coffee in the morning, half an hour ish. That's the everyday work
Daily,
that we see
yeah.
just on reporting and making things ready. It might not sound like a lot, but it's typically quite a lot of hours out there, and it's also just the hassle that arises later in the line, basically.
Exactly. And also the thing is, when those processes are manual or semi-manual, we know that humans are not perfect, right? So there is a higher chance of human error, rather than kind of having a single system that is able to monitor in an automated and digital way.
Yeah. All right. Another key takeaway, which is a completely different area, is make mappings live.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I think here that with mapping we mean thermal validations, part of the initial validation or the re-validation of your temperature-controlled units or warehouses or incubators, etc. Something that we really want to stress is make your mappings live, and that is when you're running.
Mapping is a necessary evil at the end of the day. There is no way to get around, right? So
and mappings are like the nature of a mapping from an organizational point of view is like you've completed everything. You've installed all the new temperature controlled units. You've installed the new warehouse. Everybody's in there. Technicians, HVAC, BMS people, FMS. It's just running, and then you start the validation of it. So basically, the nature is that you're always a bottleneck. Doing validations, right? You had to be done yesterday because everybody want to start using the equipment right now, and now you start finding issues. We always find issues when we perform mappings for customers and validation. So that's the case here is not that you will find things. The thing is, how do we make a very, very smooth process to find them fast and resolve them very fast?
Exactly.
And the key here is make mappings live. When you set up like 300 data loggers or sensors in a warehouse, or just 15 in a temperature controlled unit, then imagine you can find out, is this actually going to pass very fast just by having real-time data from your data loggers within, and also real-time data connected to an analytical tool immediately. So imagine this case: you have real-time data loggers and you have an analytical tool, and you're able to perform these mappings live, meaning that during the first hour, the first 2 hours, you're most likely able to find out.
You have a trend, right?
You have a trend, and you can see something. That's one benefit with it. Another benefit with it is also, something that often happens in warehouses. This, unfortunately, somebody just pass in through the gate, and then you don't track it because it was in the middle of a night, and you did a 72-hour mapping test, and then you don't know what happened during the night at 1 o'clock. It seemed like the gate was open for 5 minutes, but you actually don't know, so you can't really note it down and then take care of it based on your risk-based approach. Because if it were live, you could have reacted immediately, just called up. Is somebody in there? Yeah, Jimmy's just walking around right now. All right, cool. Can you just close it down fast, and then we can run the test still.
Here we're talking about basically apart the benefits of having real-time data to see a constant flux of data and being able to kind of predict or have an idea of how the test is going, but it's also the agility that gives you in order to adapt and react to unexpected situations. Because if you don't have live data, it's almost impossible to change the course of your test until it's done.
And then another benefit of it is that you, I think a lot of you guys out there, you're working in global companies, and you have global specialists also. So a benefit of it is that you can have remote monitoring specialists, or sorry, remote mapping specialists that are monitoring your progress, or that you can perform a mapping outside your own proximity with people on the ground to actually install and do it and follow the protocol, and then you can do all the analytical stuff remotely. So there are some benefits that really can speed up the life of validation specialists here.
Yeah. So yeah, here are a couple of our key findings when it comes to making mapping live. As we mentioned, is really to utilize those live data during mappings and the validation processes, really to streamline the temperature compliance process and prevent potential failures. Here we are talking really about your agility that is actually basically, if the system is agile, you're able to be agile yourself and adjust based on how the test is ongoing, right? So it also challenges kind of the need of 24/7 if the test is like days long of on-site specialist availability.
Yeah, sure.
That's actually quite a cost that you can have if you must have technicians 24/7 being present, while remote mapping can improve really the efficiency in this case and reduce the cost at the same time.
Yeah, because that's a fact that we haven't really touched base with yet. But one of the areas in a pharma company that is very hard to acquire specialists for is particularly the specialist within some of these areas: calibration, validation, and also technicians within operations and IT. So they are hard to find, and you often are in an abundance of them. So can you utilize your own time better is of a benefit for the company's cost, obviously. So it is really worth considering optimizing for process efficiency here, among other good benefits, but we'll come back to that.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. And then a completely different area. Like we promised you guys out there, we would touch the entire umbrella of temperature compliance, and now it's calibration points.
Yes. So, well, calibration. Calibration is also a process that is quite time-consuming, can be messy for many companies that needs to be GMP or GDP or GLP compliant, and it's also a process that over the years has changed quite a bit. Now we have new technologies, new ways to perform calibration, but in the past was actually quite common to have a person just walking around with a
dry blood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And some of you obviously have dry blood calibrations running today, because you have FMS wired systems that you just can't take out of operation, right? And you need to calibrate them on site. And streamlining calibration points is a small trick, because we know that it's you've written your protocols, the calibration points are defined there, and you can't just change them, obviously, and they're designed for the specific purpose of the unit. You're storing this, and the set points are, you need 5 different calibration points and so on and so forth. The thing here is that you have calibrations being done all over the site, and they're done in completely different cycles and frequencies.
So you're going back to the risk-based approach.
Yes. So we are back to the risk-based approach. This is why the risk-based approach is really, really there to help you, because most likely a lot of people are spending a lot of time incrementally around in the company doing calibrations, because it's something that, you can't do all calibrations once a year. Most likely, some of you might, but for some companies, it's something that you need to break up into chunks, right?
Yes.
Plus, they have different frequencies and stuff. So it's something that happens all along. You have each month, you need to ship devices to calibration. And moreover, these calibrations are independent, or they are different from type to type. So mapping out all the calibrations you have and try to streamline the process around it. And one point that you could really, really, start to look at is streamlining the points that you calibrate. First of all, because you can really reduce costs in if you use a consultant, a calibration company outside, then obviously you can reduce cost internally. Yes, you can reduce internal cost on it. And the ability, so UPRI is running a ISO accredited calibration laboratory. We have a patent on a process and a technology to calibrate really efficiently. And what we learned is that by challenging our customers in this particular point and helping changing protocols, we can do serious optimizations.
Yeah.
Like, it's a once a year thing where you just do it once. And it's completely, often at least, it's very different from what we see out there. Again, you're free to challenge our look upon this, because I know that you can't just do it overall always, but it's seriously a thing that can help you reduce cost.
Yeah.
And both in times and in cost of consultants.
And especially kind of, when it comes to the different calibration points, it is really important that they are based on the risk assessment that you've done, that you are really able to find what are your exact temperature ranges and how those devices should be calibrated. This will able to streamline and actually having kind of, I don't like to use the word, but it's really easy to replicate the calibration process, because you kind of standardize a way of how you want to control certain environments. And finding out what specifically are your necessary calibration point is really the easiest way to improve your calibration process overall.
Yeah. So again, you can see we're kind of like moving around in the company now.
Also, another thing, when you have more complex cases, right? Imagine how many different collaboration or an alignment between different labs you have to manage to recalibrate all your units. So adding the complexity of different calibration measuring points means that you have to involve maybe multiple stakeholders in a process that is very much at the basis of securing the quality of your products, right? So also here, kind of having taking the time in actually finding out what is actually really important, what are the your calibration needs. Taking this time to study it at the beginning, it will be greatly beneficial down the stretch.
So I think that this is like, nobody really knows what the future brings, but where do you at least get a chance to, get a look into the glass ball?
Yeah.
And the thing is that when you work with temperature compliance as a whole, and you start seeing the benefits of try to align all these siloed processes within in your company, which is it's a cultural change for many companies. Then you also benefit from the different aspects of regulatory changes. And you all know from all the audits that you partake in that there's always a part of the audit that's about pushing the quality and the compliance in a more positive direction. That's one of the big reasons why we have audits, is that we constantly increase the compliance level we have. And this is kind of an entire industry thing.
Mm-hmm.
It starts from the top of the waterfall, and then it drops down slowly, right? That there are constantly changes, there are constantly optimizations on compliance, and it's in all over, like all these different silos, both in calibration, in validation, in operations, etc. And by combining them, you will start to see some patterns. And we see those patterns because we have companies all over the world, mostly in US and in Europe.
Yeah.
But we see some patterns that are quite fun, and maybe we should just share a couple of with you. A general pattern is obviously one that that everything shifts from GMP and then down in the distribution chain, essentially hitting GDP and GLP at one point. But it's typically the road we see. We recently had to see, well, all pharmacies in Europe are starting to implement validations on all temperature cooling devices.
I know Denmark was really on the forefront of that.
We saw it first there, and now we see it in Norway, and then most likely will happen. We are seeing something different in the GDP industry in US, and now it's like we don't have GDP. Well, that's the thing, that FDA is working obviously on implementing a GDP compliance standard within FDA, and that's really pushing a lot. And it's basically, this also happens for you internally when you start looking at this and breaking down the silos, that you can see that there is connections between the regulation enforcements between the different silos, because they are actually connected to some extent. I think I will advise you guys to look on it because we can see some drop-offs, particularly in the IT sector right now, where we have things as NIS2 and ISO 27002 and 001, which is being rather big here in Europe. The FDA is pushing their own Part 11 and their own cybersecurity advancements. So, and this relates again to handling calibrations, which is not directly connected, but it will be connected.
Yeah. I mean, regulatory trends are evolving, but they're evolving towards stricter standards, and it's a trend that will continue. It's unstoppable. So I think we need to challenge and actually start looking in having a proactive approach to compliance in temperature monitoring, like having the foresight to see how this will develop and how the importance of having actually a solid system in the background, also how to deal with all those changes, how to deal with all those different activities in a uniformed and structured manner.
Yeah. And then, like, when you start breaking those silos down, you most likely figure out what is the most valuable compliance trend to follow.
Yeah.
Because not all of it is valuable to you or to your customers. But it will come in all 3-4 different silos that we mentioned before. Yeah. And finding a partner that can advise you, or at least just tap into the commercial value of it, I think it's relevant to consider when trying to align temperature compliance as a whole. Yeah, it's just click because we have the findings here.
Yeah, some of our key findings here.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to maybe make an ask for you guys out there, which is, what is? Would you be interested in a monthly, forecast of compliance trends, or what is seen out there? Because we've been considering that it could be worth implementing, maybe even in a webinar format, just doing half an hour. Like, what is the trend we are seeing right now?
Yes.
Does it affect you? What is the trends that you see? And then sort of just have a breakout room where we can talk openly about what's happening out there in the world as a format. Maybe share in the chat if that's anything of relevance for you guys out there.
Yeah, I think it's also really useful. So we could help each other in staying current and informed about all the regulatory trends in our industries.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So basically, what is the idea behind doing this? And it should always be, in my opinion at least, beneficial for your company that you're working in right now. And hopefully you're able to take some of the ideas, the gaps that we have found after years of research, basically, and bring them into a context that allows you in your company to follow the strategy and the trends that you see in your own company. And typically, what we see, at least, as the outcome of working with, temperature compliance as one,
Mhm.
is some of the benefits up here. The thing that we want to point out is um, the experience, the holistic level that you're able to, look upon temperature compliance with, uh, gives you an agility. You get basically access to knowledge in the market. That often is something that we can help you with, just because of our extended, knowledge and coverage, basically. Um, Something else that I really want to point out is that we see as a trend in many, many different companies is the ability to access Industry 4.0 standards. And what does that really mean, particularly in your area in compliance? Because compliance is crazy hard to change, because you run with protocols that is kind of there to secure that the operations of the business is running as they did yesterday.
It's to
So
ensure a standard.
yeah,
So
and
that's
how do you then just rip it all up and then suddenly do Industry 4.0 and digitalization, IoT, and everything like that? This might be something for you to look into, because some of the ideas that we have, or some of the gaps that we pointed out here, is actually there for you to prove that you might be able to go in an Industry 4.0 direction and talk with your managers and VPs in order to, like, is this actually there for us to consider implementing systems that can cover temperature compliance, if make it efficient for us, reduce human errors, and add a lot more flexible so we can act when a customer is there with a need. That's kind of, the benefits that we want to basically add to your company by thinking temperature compliance.
yeah, and also free people from time-consuming, boring, monotonous activities as logging manually data, right? So just the aspect of automating and digitalizing those processes. Imagine how much time might free on a day-to-day basis your team or yourself in general.
Yeah. So that was a bit about UPRI, a
Yeah.
bit about the gaps in that we've seen in temperature compliance as whole. There are so many more, and some of them you can find if you just click in the tab in the top, just next to chat. There is a section called handout. Um, Test that handout, and let me just share you while we do the QA. I'll just share you a link to one of our pages about temperature compliance also, that you can peek into. I think we are ready to start talking about the Q&A session.
Yeah.
So, what questions do we have out there? Let us have a look. Uh, Continuous mapping of transportation. What would be the minimum number of data loggers?
Huh. That depends what kind of specifics you're looking. 90% of the time we are using the WHO guidelines, which are pretty kind of clear on the amount how the data loggers needs to be separated by each other. I think it's one data logger between 5 to 10 meters, depends on the sensitivity of the product that you have stored or have to store in the containers. And then it's, I think, one data logger up to 2.5 meters, something like that. But I'm pretty sure Sena will have the correct uh, correct answer for that.
Yeah, it depends a lot on the size, obviously, when you're talking about a
Yeah.
container or something like that, or a unit within the container. Um, on our website in the mapping section, there is actually a guide to determine that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it can vary a lot from, let's say, 15 if it's again, depending on the
On
need,
yeah.
yeah, the specific situation, but you can go all the way up to 40 data loggers, I would say, in a container. Again, depending on the sections that you have in there, how many goods, and how you want to equip, unload, and stuff like that. So it's always a very hard question to answer. Again, a risk-based approach
Yeah.
is there to help you along. Senna could be able to answer this more specifically if you have some a bit more detailed specifics. Let's see here. Oh yeah, thank you, Chelsea, for promoting the temperature mapping guidelines. It's in the chat, by the way. Um, let's have a look. If nothing is changed in the warehouse, you don't need to remap. However, some industries need to remap every few years as per guidelines.
That's correct to some extent. But let's say it's good practice to remap. Usually, we see in the industry trend it's every 4 years or so. And what is also necessary, which it's often forgotten, is kind of that you have to perform a winter and summer mapping, because they are the two most critical seasons, and perhaps your building behaves differently in the different season. Of course, if you install a new HVAC system, then most likely you have to remap.
And that's exactly the thing. It's again a part of the risk-based approach here, because if you kind of build the criterias right from the beginning, like what is it actually that it takes for this system to run, and if you then see that have a pattern that is changing, or that you, I don't know, want to run a truck into a fridge or something like that, then obviously a revalidation is something that you need to use. Then there are also some like normal frequencies. Again, there's a balance here between ongoing reviews, trending, and revalidation, because you can kind of cover some of the revalidation within the ongoing review and trend and tendencies that can allow your revalidation to be pushed further out in the future to be more efficient. Trending is something that we didn't talk too much about today, but it's actually a really cool topic to just very fast topic.
Yeah. One thing that's talking about trends, one thing that we noticed at UPRI is actually in the last years, something that is impacting the remapping of warehouses is actually climate change. Especially in the southern countries, we notice that there are coming more and more requests from Italy, France, and all that, where they talk specifically that actually summers are getting much warmer for in some specific times. So they felt
that's a really good case. Like again, the conditions surrounding is changing.
yes,
just because
exactly.
of climate change. Right.
Exactly.
Wow.
So and we had actually two cases like that in southern France, where they come to us asking that they noticed that trend, and was actually really peculiar, because it was actually south facing windows that actually were warming up quite more, and were huge glass windows, and that was actually noticeably impacting the environment in the warehouse. So it's also the outside environment that actually is a driver for the remapping processes.
Interesting. Yeah, because normally, it's not. It's not normal that the environment changes, because you see that in let's say a basement, and you did a validation of a ULT freezer deep down in a basement where you have blood samples or something like that, and then you start equipping this basement with 5 new ULT freezers, and then the general temperature in the room arises, and then again you have a situation where you need to revalidate, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, it's kind of like the outside conditions.
Yes.
I heard a really funny thing from a client a couple of days ago, and he said, "Yeah, Adam, we're running out of winter," because they were supposed to perform a winter mapping, and then he said, like, "Yeah, we're running out of winter right now in order for them to perform it." So yeah, that was just a fun phrase. I thought it was hilarious.
Even that we had quite a winter here in Denmark.
Yes, we had so much snow, and again, that's a thing, if you suddenly see these kind of extreme situations, apparently both on the
Exactly.
summer side, but most likely also on the winter side.
The trend is that we are having our climate is having more extreme weathers, and that triggers like the necessity of keeping our facilities also safe and performing as they were before.
And just so you're aware, we will stop in 5 minutes. I just realized that we have 5 minutes left. We can keep on and on forever. But I just wanted to touch base on a topic, trending, because it's a trend that's out there. Trending and analysis of like trending behaviors of temperature controlled units or warehouses, etc., is actually growing.
Mm-hmm.
And trending is so enormously hard to do with manually based data. Okay, let me give you an example. Maybe you have a digital monitoring system. You're using FMS or something like that. And then over years you see some sort of pattern. But can you trust that pattern? Because meanwhile, you've had multiple different types of calibration or companies to perform the calibration. You've had multiple different deviations during time, and you didn't note them in the same system. You even changed the sensor meanwhile. In some cases, it was all manually done. So it all falls back to trending is actually very hard to do. When you start combining temperature compliance as one, you have validation in one system, you have monitoring in one system, you have calibration in one system also. You have all the data. It's connected. It's been following the same process and procedure, and it's digital for day one. You can do real trending.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm killer selling UPRI right now, but it's actually something that but it's actually something we've seen that people is really interested in, the ability to trend. It's most often on like temperature controlled units with MPEs that are super low, 0.5 or 0.2 or something like that. Maybe even lower 0.1. But because there you really, really need to be precise in your tracking of what's going on, basically. So yeah, trending is one of the trends out there. Coolio?
Do we have time for some more questions or?
Oh, we just get Lucia, who says that they've seen this as well with the climate change in the summer winter mappings. Thank you for chipping in. It's a bit crazy, I know it's a completely different topic, but being a bit of a philanthropist here, it's crazy that it can actually affect things like this in the way it does right now. Right, everybody. I think we are very close to the end here. Well, we do have a specific question from Chelsea. Maybe we can just chip in with that in the end.
Yes, of course.
All right. So after the initial calibration of the vehicle probes, is it correct to assume that there would be yearly verifications? First, we verify that the probes are still in the required accuracy, and only if they don't, we consider recalibration. Would that implicitly mean that that somewhat pass as a calibration certificate, or is it only a verification of calibration status certificate? Well, in UPRI we are an ISO accredited calibration company, and you can do on-site calibrations. You can do many different varieties of checks and stuff like that. But a calibration can only be done by a real calibration procedure.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. But also coming back to the question, we had a similar question last time with Jakob. There is actually not precise specific that says that you have to recalibrate on a yearly basis, but that's actually the industry standard, which is kind of equally important in product and customer driven market as is maybe life science, where the guidelines given by your customers are equally important to the guidelines given by any accreditation body and all that.
That's a mega good point, actually. And we know, like, that's the advice we always give also. Like, yes, yearly calibrations, do it. But actually, it's again, if you really want to be critical, you could. Well, what we see actually out there is that that some of our customers, they wish to try to challenge this.
Yes.
With, let's say, again, if you can do a really, really hardcore trend analysis on the calibration result, if you track what happened last year, what happened this year, and can we see a 10-year trend within UPRI and our calibration laboratory as an example? If that's the case, and you can prove that the drift of a sensor and the likelihood of it drifting more than that can be proved to live up to the expectations still, then again, by using the risk-based approach, there is it is potentially there for you to challenge it and then say, yeah, we actually only need a 2-year calibration cycle.
But coming back also if you don't cover all those activities under one process, one umbrella, it's extremely hard.
Yeah, because it's like it's monitoring, it's calibration, and most likely also validation in the end, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's to answer this question is actually yes and no to some extent.
That's a very consultant kind of answer, right? Yeah. You take all the responsibility, so yes and no.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is like that.
But that's exactly why we have Senna, Arslan, Jakob, and the rest of the crew in the validation and quality team in UPRI. If you have anything, then don't hesitate to reach out to that team. I wanna thank y'all out there. It's been wonderful to talk about this particular topic with you, Alice. Thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Adam. And thank you all around the world, basically. Have a good morning, good night to the ones in that end, and then good afternoon to the rest of you here in Europe. Jan, are you with us? Because I just want to say thank you also. It's been wonderful and joyful to do this webinar together with you hosting it. Thanks to Frederikke, to Nils, who's just on the other side of this screen in our new webinar room, and to the rest of the team sitting up there.
Chelsea and Senna.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. So I've shared a link to a survey before you log out. It would be great if you share some of your insight about this webinar, because we always want to improve. And big thanks to our amazing audience, and of course to the incredible UPRI team for their time and commitment to making the GXP community more knowledgeable by sharing all your incredible insights. So thank you very much, and I'm looking for our next ones.
Nice. That's really cool. And I need to say hi from Jakob Conradsen, who's not here today with us. He's taking care of his new kid.
Yeah.
So that's why he's not here, but he's probably going to be here next time.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Great. So
thank you out
bye,
there.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.